Akash, and this is your News of the Week for the actually 2 weeks of June 6th to June 19th, 2021. We have quite a few stories to take a look at, so let's begin with President Biden, who actually visited London recently for the 47th meeting of the G7 countries, who are the group of 7 G7 economically large countries. This consists of Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the UK, and the US. And so these 7 countries meet annually in a different location in one of these countries. So this year, they've decided to hold it in London, in the UK. So this is what took place, and the major issues that were brought up during the G7 leaders' discussions included dealing with the coronavirus pandemic, helping to stop climate change, and also actually something more, which is countering influence of China. So we have all of these 3 important things, and these were the topics discussed in this latest G7 meeting. Now, let's take a look at our next story. It's another meeting, but this time President Biden did a summit with the Russian President Vladimir Putin in Geneva, Switzerland on the 17th. And so they both discussed and managed to help improve the strained relations between these 2 countries. So President Biden said that he did what he came to do at the summit. And he said that the US and Russia were 2 great countries. And meanwhile, President Putin had some remarks to say about Biden, saying that he was a very balanced man who has clearly had experience before. Well, I mean, of course he's had. So President Biden and Russian President Putin were discussing several topics. Now, based on what you've just heard, it really looks like the 2 have gotten along pretty well, but it wasn't without some very contentious issues. And this included the jailing of the opposition leader in Russia, Alexei Navalny, and also the use of Russian state intelligence in alleged cyber attacks. And so these were just some of the issues brought up during this summit. The next story I want to talk about here actually is also related to politics. And this is actually Vice President Kamala Harris, who visited Guatemala and Mexico and met with the Mexican President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, and together the 2 talked about the border situation in between the US and Mexico. And this is a very apt time to talk about this issue and discuss it. And that's because tens of thousands of immigrants are illegally crossing the border into America. And now, next story that we're going to take a look at actually is in Israel, and this is that Benjamin Netanyahu's 12-year-long record continuous tenure of being prime minister has finally come to an end, as a coalition deal in Israel has been set up by 8 different parties. Now, this new rotation deal sees the right-wing leader Naftali Bennett become the prime minister for 2 years until 2023, when the centrist Yair Lapid will take over until 2025. Now, this is the idea that they've come up with, and it's the platform that they'll be using, hopefully, for the next 4 years. Now, how this deal came all about was actually because of a 2-year-long political crisis in which 4 elections were held, but no party was ever able to gain a majority. The only way to do so was by the power of coalitions. And, well, nobody really felt like making coalitions at the time. So eventually, after a lot of debating, Netanyahu, at that time prime minister, created a coalition with the leader of Israel Resilience, Benny Gantz. And so what he did here was he created with Netanyahu and Gantz and 6 other parties a coalition which would rule the country, and it was another rotation deal. So Netanyahu would rule for 2 years, and then Benny Gantz would rule for 2 years, something like that. So that's what they did, but the thing is, recently, 4 of those parties in that coalition left. And so this gave rise to new coalitions, like the one Bennett and Lapid did. And so this is what happened. And so this means that this came all to a vote. And so this happened in the Knesset, which is the Israeli Congress, and the result succeeded. It succeeded. Bennett and Lapid took over control of the country, but only by 1 vote. Which means it was a really contentious issue. And by the way, that 1 vote was actually abstained from a member of one of the parties in this new coalition, the United Arab List, who was apparently unsure of who to go for. So he abstained, ultimately giving the vote to Bennett and Lapid, winning the election. And so now we see this new era of Bennett and Lapid ending the 12-year-long record tenure of Benjamin Netanyahu as Prime Minister of Israel. Now, the next story I want to talk about relates to our COVID update. So let's talk about our India COVID-19 situation, which is actually slowly coming under control. So this is great news as the curve is finally falling. Now we just have 60,000 cases per day and 1,500 deaths per day. Now, this is a massive improvement. This new cases is now a massive improvement from the hundreds of thousands that we used to see just a month ago. But then again, there's still quite a bit of progress to go. Now, another thing that you may notice here is that the deaths haven't really changed all that much. They've still stayed the same. And this means that maybe even worse, some people might even be saying that some scientists and health experts, they're predicting that there might even be a 3rd wave of COVID-19 which could hit India sometime in fall this year. So the government of India is hard at work trying to stop this from happening. And so vaccinations are currently on the rise. We've got over 250 million shots administered, which is amazing. But the only thing is, it only seems to account for 4% of the public being fully vaccinated, which isn't necessarily good news. But we are expecting to see more vaccinations coming in soon, and hopefully that percentage rises up in the coming weeks. So I really hope that this outbreak ends soon. Now, the next situation I want to talk about actually refers to the variants of COVID-19. Now, the main variant which sparked this whole COVID-19 second wave in India was the Indian variant, most commonly known as the Delta variant. Now, this variant is 60 times more transmissible than the first detected variant of this virus, Alpha. And so Delta right here is now the most dominant variant of COVID-19 in the entire world, which is impressive. But also it's very, very dangerous as it is very transmissible. As I said, 60% more transmissible than the first detected variant of this virus. So CDC Director Rochelle Walensky was interviewed on Good Morning America, and she said, and I'm paraphrasing here, that although the Delta variant is very, very hyper transmissible, our vaccines will work against it. And so this means that if you're fully vaccinated, there's a high chance that you'll be safe from this variant. So as of now, what we know is that the Pfizer and AstraZeneca vaccines are both effective at protecting you from the Delta variant. Pfizer at 88% and AstraZeneca at 60%. So make sure to get a vaccine today if you haven't already, to protect yourself from the viruses and the variants like these. Now, the next one I want to talk about, and this is the last COVID-related one this time, actually relates to a fourth vaccine being made by Maryland-based biotechnology vaccine company Novavax. Now, Novavax has created a new vaccine with the help of CEPI, which is a vaccine foundation to help the vaccines. And so the Novavax and CEPI have created this fourth vaccine with a 90% efficacy rate, which is pretty good. So now what's going to happen is they're planning to send it to approval by the FDA's emergency use authorization by September, hopefully. So this is what we're expecting to see from Novavax, and it's going to be cool if it makes through the FDA's authorization process, because if it does, we might as well be seeing a fourth vaccine coming in the next few months, and I'm super excited for that. Next, now we're going to get into a little more politics, and this starts off with Juneteenth. Now, to be fair, this isn't all too much politics. This is actually the day which commemorates the moment when the last black slaves in the American Civil War were liberated from slavery. It's a momentous occasion. And so this day was actually June 19th, 1865. And so that's why Juneteenth, June 19th, has been celebrated every year since. So Juneteenth has officially, which by the way is today, Juneteenth has officially become a federal holiday after it was signed by President Biden 2 days ago on June 17th. Now, this came after great approval by both House and Senate. And so we're here now celebrating Juneteenth as a federal holiday for the very first time ever, and that is some great news. Now let's follow this up with something that's rather grim. Now, this actually pertains to Israel and Palestine again. So just a month after the deadly conflict between Israel and Palestine, the two sides are in war yet again. This is very dangerous. So Palestine fired incendiary balloons into southern Israel, sparking a lot of forest fires, and meanwhile Israel takes revenge and responds by firing airstrikes into the Gaza region. So things are very much going south for this, going really, really down. This is bad. But I hope that the two sides will finally make peace again, as it's been quite a while since they've last been at peace. So I hope that the situation will be less tense following this, even though it seems like the two sides are ready for any violence that comes their way. So I hope the situation gets a lot better. Now, here's some more interesting news in the space field. So for all of you space enthusiasts and wannabe astronauts out there, this is for you. So China's National Space Administration, CNSA, has launched just 2 days ago on June 17th, 3 astronauts on a Long March 2F rocket called Shenzhou 12, this mission, and they're actually flying it to their own space station to help build it. Now, this space station is known as Tiangong, and in late April, actually April 29th, 2021, they launched the very first module of this modular space station. It's the Tianhe core module, and so they built it and they sent it into space, well, into orbit on April 29th. And so, since then, it's just been floating around in space, and now China's gotten the perfect time to launch astronauts to it. So they've sent 3 taikonauts, if you would, over to the station, and so these 3 astronauts will be there for 3 months doing several experiments and helping to build this brand new Chinese space station. It's going to be interesting to see what comes out of this mission. Next, we're going to talk about what's happening right here on Earth, and specifically we're going to focus on the Southeastern America, because Tropical Storm Claudette is pummeling Louisiana right now as I speak. this is very, very, very horrible situation that's happening right now. This tropical storm is bringing in lots of heavy rain and dangerous flash floods. And so this is a very, very weird and dangerous situation with Tropical Storm Claudette. So now we're expecting to see it pass through Mississippi and Alabama before it reaches the East Coast. And after it heads along the coast for a while, it's going to start to weaken by tomorrow. And so it's going to turn into a post-tropical storm, and hopefully it's going to be dissipating in the few days to follow. So for anyone who's in the path of this hurricane, who is currently affected by it, make sure to stay safe. Our thoughts and prayers are with you, and we know you can make it through. Now, the next one I want to talk about is that we've been covering here the southeastern United States. Let's take a look at what's going on in the southwest, which is just as bad. We have a gigantic heat wave is passing through the west of the country of America. So this is really not good at all. It's a heat wave, which means that we're going to be seeing some blazing hot temperatures, even at like 100 degrees Fahrenheit or over. This is what we've seen when we actually experienced this heat wave just a couple of days ago. And so you saw repeated emergency alerts regarding excessive heat warnings, and it was horrible. So now, if you go to the National Weather Service's website at weather.gov, they'll put a map of all the weather advisories going on, and you can see that in much of California and Arizona, there is a lot of excessive heat warnings taking place throughout the majority of these two states. So actually, there's a lot, even more worse situations coming in a lot of the northwestern states where there are even potential fire warnings going on, wildfire warnings. So this situation is going on rapidly, and we hope that it's going to go away soon. So next, we're going to take a look at our final story for the 2 weeks. And this story is actually relating to the French Open. The winner of the French Open men's singles is tennis world number 1 Novak Djokovic of Serbia. And the winner of the women's singles is women's world number 1 Czech Republic's Barbora Krejcikova. And so what we're seeing right here is actually a record that might be broken by Novak Djokovic. You may know that with this French Open win, this makes Novak Djokovic the only player in recent times to have won all 4 of the Grand Slam tournaments twice over, which is mind-blowing. And not just that, he's on track to beat another record, perhaps one of the greatest records tennis has, currently held as a tie between Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal, 2 of the greatest players in recent times. These 2 have held the record for the most Grand Slam wins, 20. And so it seems that Novak Djokovic is right here at 19. And so guess what this means? This means that indeed Djokovic might beat this long-standing record by the beginning of next year. And this is going to be some really, really exciting information to see. So it's going to be so much fun. I truly cannot wait, and I hope that you can too. That is all of the news of the week for the 2 weeks here at June 6th to June 19, 2021. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon next time. Thanks so much. Goodbye.